Well, welcome everybody. This is the fourth Aston Originals AIME podcast. So we're very excited to be here. And today we're going to talk to Dr. Matt Derry, my colleague. But let me introduce myself first. So my name is Roslyn Bill. I'm a professor of biotechnology in our School of Biosciences within our College of Health and Life Sciences. And I'm also the co-director of Aston Institute for Membrane Excellence, which is now an official institute. So we're very excited. AIME, for those of you who don't know, I think there are only probably a couple of people who don't know what AIME is. AIME is our Aston Institute for Membrane Excellence, which I just mentioned. And it basically brings together all things membrane. So membranes are biological structures that keep our cells intact and keep things in that should be in, and things that are outside that should be outside of our cells, so we can be healthy and grow and thrive. But membranes for some others on the chemistry side of the street, which is actually my side of the street originally, and certainly Matt's side of the street now, I kind of migrated over to the biology side. Membranes can be things like purification structures. They can be plastics. They can be important structures that allow us, again, to keep things in the right place, but biotechnologically. So, think about the stuff that maybe sits in your water purification filter at home or something like that. And at AIME, we want to bring everything together. So we allow the biology to inspire the chemistry, and the chemistry to help us with questions in biology and physics and all of the other sciences in between, except geography. Allow us to answer important questions about how to make membranes better. So that's very exciting. And Matt is one of our co-founders. He's also our PR and comms lead on the management team, which is why I'm feeling a bit under pressure here, because he normally does this job. And those of you who've seen one of our podcasts will remember when he interviewed me. So it's my turn to get my own back now and talk to Matt. So Matt is a senior lecturer here at Aston. He's in our College of Engineering and Physical Sciences. And we're here today to talk about his amazing new investigator award from the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, which is really quite an achievement. So well done, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're going to talk to you today about this award. So Matt is a very successful member of the team at AIME. He's got this great award. He's a co-applicant on the AIME grant, which was launched by a £10 million grant from Research England. So thank you, Research England, for giving us that cash. And he also is on a number of other grants with other colleagues within the team that you'll have heard about as well. So, but today we're going to focus on you and your own new investigator award.
Okay.
So let's get stuck in. I should say it's about £450,000 as well.
Yes, so that's the funding that we got from EPSRC for this, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us anything more about that?
Yeah, so the project, which I am going to read out because it's a long one, but bear with me, we'll break each of it down as we go along, I guess. So it's sustainable, responsive, hybrid, ionic-liquid polymer gel electrolyte materials. So what we're trying to do is aiming to replace often liquid electrolytes, which are organic solvents and often flammable, let's say. There are other things that we're trying to improve, but we're trying to improve on the electrolytes that are within common batteries, like lithium-ion batteries that we'll find in our phones, even in larger things like our electric vehicles.
Okay, that's cool. Are you going to tell us a little bit about what those electrolytes do for the non-specialists here like me? So why do we need to replace those things?
Yeah, so the electrolytes, what they do, let's say in a lithium-ion battery, they facilitate the movement of the lithium-ion, which effectively promotes the movement of electrons through a circuit, which helps us power things via electricity, right? So we need a liquid or a gel, which is safer than a liquid, which we can mention, to facilitate the transfer of the lithium from one side, let's say an anode to a cathode, or a cathode to an anode, positively or negatively charged plates within our battery. And that's how batteries charge or discharge to deliver or store electricity.
Okay, that's cool. And of course, this is a big deal, isn't it? Because you've got electric cars, you've got phones, you've got all sorts of reasons to need these sorts of batteries. So this is a really important problem.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And I guess you've got some industry involvement as well?
Yes, so we've got BASF on board. They manufacture and distribute ionic liquids. So we're using some of their ionic liquids. Importantly, they're non-fluorinated ionic liquids, so potentially and are better for the environment in that way. We've also got CPI, Centre for Process Innovation here in the UK, which helps to kind of take academic research and translate it towards industry. So to kind of give some impact for the research. So whatever we manage to do, we've always got in mind of the end application in goal, so it's relevant to industry. And speaking of industry, we've got a small startup firm from Denmark who are a supercapacitor startup firm called InnoCell. and they're interested in our technology and seeing how they can implement the gel electrolytes in next generation supercapacitors.
Okay, so this is really exciting. You know, this is an academic project, but already you've got a plan for how this might actually be really useful for real life and to change people's lives. And those of you who know about membranes will know that you might be thinking, why are we talking about batteries? But of course, what you're doing here is applying the special polymer chemistry that you work on. That's also green. That's really important. But putting it into a context that might not immediately feel like a membrane context, but you are using that technology.
Yeah. So essentially, we're developing something that things can move through, right? You can imagine that a membrane's there. And also within a battery, there is something called a separator, which is a plastic, typically plastic element in the middle, which keeps the anode and cathode separate. Because if that happens, if the anode and cathode come together in a battery, it short circuits and can cause huge explosions. And this is a polymeric, porous membrane type material, which allows the lithium ions through, but protects the contact of the anode and cathode as well. So there are membranes within batteries too.
Yeah. Perfectly explained. So as you can see, you know, we're all about all things membrane, and I think that's exciting about what the project is. So tell us how you came up with the idea.
So I started my academic career in December 2019, a little while ago now, but this really was my kind of first vision. So taking the chemistry that I learned and developed during my PhD and in my postdoctoral research years at the University of Sheffield, and kind of going in another direction with it. So going down the ionic liquid route to make these new gel electrolytes. And it's the idea I pitched when I interviewed for the position here, and put it into action with my first PhD student, Georgia Maitland, who's Dr. Georgia Maitland, I should say now. She is the researcher on this grant as well. So she's continuing her great research. So we got some proof of concept studies. We published a paper earlier this year in Chemical Science, a Royal Society of Chemistry journal, which was the first report of our individual approach to making these new gel electrolytes. So yeah, touch wood and continue to go like this. It's been quite a success story.
Fantastic. So that's 5 years ago. Did I get those dates right when you first came
Roughly,
in?
yep.
Yeah, get me. So this is wonderful. I mean, this is Matt, he's far too modest to say this, but this is an amazing start to an academic career to achieve this. And it's really great to see that your PhD student is now involved in this as well, because good people stay at Aston, right? Yes,
and it's been great to continue the project, keep the momentum up, and we've got lots more things in the pipeline. So yeah, and things should be coming out.
Congratulations on that publication as well. That's exciting.
Thank you.
So okay, so basically you pitched the idea and it's coming to fruition now. So are you going to give us a bit more about some of the concerns over the current technologies, and that'll lead into when we talk about your current idea?
Sure. So I mentioned the flammability issue, and we might, if you think back 10 years ago now, maybe there were issues of Samsung tablets basically combusting on aircraft, right? So at one point they were banned from going on commercial airlines because you don't want something setting on fire when you're in the air, right? And this was essentially flammable components in a battery combusting. Okay, so we need to move away from these as much as possible. There's another example from a few years ago in Australia where there was a huge lithium-ion battery warehouse, if you like, where they store lots and lots of electricity, a Tesla one, which just went up in flames.
Wow.
And you can't just put out a lithium-based fire by chucking a load of water on it. So they just had to let it burn out. And I think it took 3 days and caused a lot of pollution, irreparable damage to the buildings, and a lot of financial cost as well. So we need to move away from it from a flammability point of view, because currently they use organic liquids, typically, which are highly flammable. So ionic liquids, which is my potential solution for this, have a much lower vapor pressure, which in real terms just means that it's not volatile, it doesn't evaporate. And it's the inorganic flammable solvents, it's the vapor that evaporates from the liquid that is highly flammable. Okay, so if we reduce that, the flammability of ionic liquids is far lower. So that's one way that we're going to change it, going from a flammable organic liquid to an ionic liquid, which is much, much less flammable.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, as we mentioned, I'm a polymer chemist, so there's going to be some polymers in there somewhere. So I'm introducing polymers into the ionic liquid to make the ionic liquid into a gel.
Okay, and so this sounds like the real innovation here.
Yeah, so I'm going to, we have added polymers, or we've actually made the polymers in the ionic liquid. So we're doing it in situ. We're making the gel during the chemical reaction. And what this does is it means that we can use the ionic liquid, which is has low flammability, but also make it a gel so that it won't leak from our device. And it's the leaking of flammable organic compounds that can cause real fire risk issues.
Okay, so that's very cool. And so moving away from organic solvents, which are volatile and toxic, and we just don't want to use those, they're not very green, to this clever idea of focusing on ionic liquids, but making them gels by using your polymer plastics.
Yes, and for the first time, what we demonstrated is we can do this in situ, as I said, during the polymerization, but not in a way that forms a real dense network. What we're doing is we actually have polymers called block copolymers, which are essentially two segments stitched together. They can't separate from one another, but one of them really likes the ionic liquid. One of them really hates the ionic liquid. So what we get, and you might appreciate this from the biological aspect, is molecular assembly of these amphiphilic type molecules. So the bit that hates the ionic liquid will want to hide from it, and that'll pack together. The bit that likes the ionic liquid will stay on the outside of any object, and they'll basically stabilize these objects. And in our lab, we have a quest for worms. Worms is the shape of these objects that we like, these cylindrical micelles, but it's more fun to call them worms.
Yeah.
And this is what forms our gel network, because we have a percolating network of worms that arrests any mobility of the liquid. So it forms our relatively soft gel this way. But we think that the nature of this soft gel will be really beneficial for the application, both to prevent leakage, but also to still enable the flow of lithium ions through the battery, which is ultimately what we need it to do still.
This is really cool. So basically you're using these polymers, these block copolymers. And those of you who've listened to our other podcasts know that we love these types of molecules because they can extract biological proteins out of lipids so we can study them. And now you're applying them to another really important problem that we have in the world, which is we need better battery technology. Yeah, amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really, really interesting. So we've talked a little bit about these responsive materials. I guess we've touched on that a little bit, but can you tell us what responsive means?
Yeah, so responsive was kind of a word in the title. And the reason why it's important, as I said, we're not forming a dense, compact network to make our gel. It's more of a loose, percolating network. Is that what we can do is change something like the temperature and change our gel material into a liquid. And this is fully reversible. So what we're trying to do here is introduce a degree of recyclability into our gel electrolytes. So if, let's say, a battery gets spent over time, we know that the battery on our phone starts to get less and less less easily charged, right? Or it takes a lot shorter time to completely deplete the battery, and then eventually it just stops working. I've had this with my laptop. Like today. So yeah, it's very triggering for me at the moment. But anyway, the electrolyte itself is fundamentally recyclable. So our idea is, can we withdraw that electrolyte, regenerate it if needed, and use it in another device? And the easiest way to do this, because a gel would be difficult to remove without taking apart the battery. If we change the temperature, simply withdraw the liquid, and then set the gel in another environment where it might be useful. This is the vision, if you like. And we're starting to get some promising preliminary results for this. Okay.
So do you think that's something that you could do a large number of times or indefinitely, or do you think there'd be a lifetime associated with that?
There may be, and this is something we need to investigate, but you can certainly do it tens to hundreds of times, just simply changing the temperature. Because what it does, I mentioned these worms that form the gel. It changes the solvation power of the ionic liquid relative to room temperature, let's say. So it changes how much the block that doesn't like the ionic liquid dislikes or likes the solvent. And it changes shape then, the object. It changes from a worm-like object, which can cause these contacts and networks, to spherical objects, which can't form a network.
Snails.
We can call them
Worms
snails. Worms are snails, but snails that are hidden up in their shell.
Yeah. Okay.
And then that forms a liquid, because these spheres can't interact in a large network. It can flow, but when you change the temperature back, the worms can reform.
All right. So this is very nice. So you can imagine a scenario then you're using the benefits of things that were problematic with the organic liquids, in the sense that you didn't want those to leak, but these ones you actually want to be able to extract now they're liquids,
exactly,
but you can then use them again.
And I guess this is relevant right now because we've got a lot more electric vehicles on our road. and this is going to continue to be a thing, right? And the
Yep.
first generation of electric vehicles are starting to come to the end of the life of their batteries, and we can take them out and put a new battery in. But what do we do with that old battery? Many of the parts are recyclable.
Yep.
And we're just trying to make the electrolyte, which is quite a key component, more and more easily recyclable that way. And we're also trying to then move, because we've got these proof of concept results, which we published earlier this year. We're also trying to move to greener starting materials. So our polymers currently in the proof of concept work are oil derived, but we want to move to like bio-derived monomers to make these polymers, and then make everything more of a circular economy for this.
That'd be fantastic. I mean, I'm assuming by bio-derived, you might also be able to make them out of waste products.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is exactly what we're going to investigate.
Yeah. And do you think there's going to be a situation where you could actually extract the lithium as well from these ionic liquids, so you can perhaps recycle that?
It would be perfect, yes. And there is some technology out there that would enable this. It's just there's lots of different parts that in a recycling sense in a battery aren't compatible. They have to have very separate processes, so you have to take everything apart. So if we can simplify and make one part of that process more efficient, then we've done our job, if you like, or at least we've contributed to help the problem.
And I know you're involved in projects that look at separating things like ions and lithium ions, for example. So there might, in the future, you might even be using your own technologies, using polymers to extend what you can do now with these batteries that contain these very special ionic liquids.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
So you're really on this. So this is amazing. And I guess, as you say, if this technology can be integrated into car batteries, laptop batteries, all the sorts of mobile phone batteries, etc., this is going to be a potential game changer here. Yeah,
as the invention of lithium-ion batteries in the first place was. I mean, our society and our lives would be completely different if we didn't have these portable devices which have lithium-ion batteries, so we don't need to be plugged into cables the whole way. Imagine a world where every electronic device would need to be plugged in to work.
Yes,
right? It
absolutely.
would be absolute carnage.
It would be absolute carnage. It'd be like if you and I got up and started walking around with these hanging off us. Amazing. So we've touched a little bit on how wormy snails fit in with AIME, but can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So you mentioned it and introduced AIME brilliantly at the start. So we've got lots of different research objectives. One of them is sustainability driven as well, and that's where I really see this fitting in. So in terms of energy storage is going to be critical for us to meet our net zero goals that we have by 2030, and storing renewable electricity is a big problem with that. We can generate it quite well, but at the moment storing it and then releasing it on demand is where we potentially could improve our net zero credentials. So if we can introduce another way that we can more efficiently store electricity, but also in a way that those batteries are recyclable, as we've mentioned, then that's one way we can contribute there. So I see it more in the sustainability, sustainable polymers, sustainable plastics way. But we've also mentioned that these things basically facilitate transport of something. That's inherently what a membrane does. It controls and facilitates transport. And there's going to be transferable applications from this kind of proof of concept platform technology that we're developing.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting.
I'm glad you think so.
Yeah, no, I do. I really do. The more I ask you about it, the more I understand, this could be a real game changer. I think it's exciting science, and, it really does, I think, exemplify really well how broad the importance of membranes are to our everyday lives. If you think about us as human beings, we are essentially the embodiment of biological membranes. But of course, there's human beings that live in the world. Many of the things that we need to do that are important involve biotechnological membranes. So that interface between us and the rest of the world is, you've really beautifully demonstrated that with your project.
Yeah, and it kind of highlights what we're doing in AIME as well. We're bringing the chemistry and the biological side together. Even just from working in the same environment, things will naturally happen that way. And that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. So tell us about anything that we should be looking out for in the near future.
Yeah, so I suppose I gave a little bit of a teaser. We've got work going on in the lab right now. I mentioned Georgia is the postdoctoral researcher working on this now. We'll also be having a PhD student starting in October 2025. Yeah, getting my dates correct as well. So look to the camera, please look out for adverts for this coming out shortly. If you're interested in this subject and are a potential PhD student, get in touch.
Also, this will be an open opportunity, so I'm going to look at the camera as well. apply to work with Matt. He's an amazing supervisor, and this sounds like a really super exciting project. So watch out, I guess, on Find a PhD and
Yes.
on the Aston website,
Yep.
the AIME website. Yeah.
That's it. We'll be pushing that. And yeah, we are currently writing a manuscript, like the follow-up manuscript, for some additional work on this, and we're working with those industrial partners to kind of see what we need to do to push it towards that final application, because that's the end goal here.
Yeah. And can you think of how long it will be before you might see these types of developments actually sitting in a battery?
It's a good question. Obviously, this depends on many things, but we're ready to test them in kind of prototype devices right now, and that's what we're starting to do. So hopefully sooner than later.
That's very, very exciting. Well, I think we've covered everything. I'm just going to look down at my sheet now. I need new glasses, folks, so that's why I'm looking around. But yeah, I think if you're an excited young scientist who sees potential here, apply to Matt's PhD position, which will be advertised, I would imagine, soonish.
Yes, within the next month or so.
Yeah, I'm not going to put a date on that because I'll get it wrong. But I'm assuming as well, if you're a master's project student, you might consider applying and working with Matt and all this exciting science. But I really want to thank Matt today, Dr. Matt Derry, general legend and polymer expert. A great example of the sort of exciting science we do here at AIME. So watch for his publications. And thanks, Matt. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
All right. Great. See you soon, folks.